representatives in this room of the state of Kerala. On Mirror Now, we've been tracking Kerala very, very closely, and I can't tell you how Kerala made the whole country proud. Because everybody put aside everything else, and it was the most beautiful display of citizens just coming together and doing work for the sake of doing work. Nobody was expecting anything in return, and I think that was fabulous. So give yourselves a round of applause for being a model state in so many ways. I'm extremely pleased to welcome Mr. Tharoor, Member of Parliament, Thiruvananthapuram. This is your constituency.
My constituency, absolutely.
And it's an interesting time to have this conversation about social media. You're very active on social media as well, and a lot played out. I want to remind our audience that Kerala is perhaps, state-wise, has the largest penetration of smartphones in every household, has the largest penetration of internet coverage in every single village. And so the sort of mobilization that we saw happen during the floods could only have been done by a state like Kerala. Also given the level of literacy. So only Kerala could have showed the rest of the country how to use social media. It was used for both good and evil. I want to first talk about the good. The appeals, the mobilization, the groups that were formed of Malayalis from around the world. And in a very respectful, organized fashion, they organized relief. You were on the ground as well, and I know you were part of several of these groups. How important do you think it was to have social media as part of those conversations?
I think it was extremely important at various levels. Before we even get to the relief groups, there was the rescue issue. Yes. Because in the first days of the flooding, a lot of people were appealing on social media, either for their relatives who were marooned or with whom they'd lost contact. In some cases, there were people who actually couldn't get a phone line out, but were able to tweet their location, ask for help. And I myself, as you will see from my Twitter timeline, retweeted a couple of those, and then I realized that was not as useful as directly getting it to the Kerala control room, where the rescues were being organized. So in the first few days, social media came in there, and I think you noticed, Faye, that we actually had some people using Google Maps and pinpointing their locations with that little oval, red-colored oval, pointing to where they were. And in some cases, of course, that was very helpful. Though the rescue challenges went beyond just identifying where people were, there was a problem of even being able to reach the people you could identify. And that's where what you first said, the way in which everybody rallied together, became so useful, because even fisher people were able to go out with their normal boats and go out and get people whom the naval vessels were not able to reach. And I do want to just been congratulating the NDRF chief who's here in the audience for the sterling work that his team did. The Navy, the Coast Guard, the Army, the helicopter pilots of the Army, terrific work. Yes. And at the same time, the Kerala public overwhelmingly stood together on social media and off social media. I think one thing one can say from a Kerala point of view is that the nation woke up a bit late. When we were consumed with the tragedy on the 14th, 15th, 16th, it was getting progressively bad. 15th and 16th, I was on the ground visiting flooded areas here. In those days, all you could see on national TV was Mr. Vajpayee. And I'm a great admirer of Mr. Vajpayee myself, but people could not understand how, with thousands of their fellow citizens in peril, the national media was not interested in
Mr. Tharoor, you are obviously watching the wrong channels.
We heard from, well, here in Kerala, we were watching the Kerala channels. But we heard from people who were monitoring.
Mirror Now had a reporter on the ground in Kerala, 8th onwards.
Good.
We moved our reporters from Chennai, we moved our reporters from Bangalore. We got help from News Minute and Danya Rajendra. We had help from Mathrubhumi. We had help from a lot of people, who were reporting on the ground. Unfortunately, in Indian news, loudest is also.
Unfortunately, that's true. And I congratulate Mirror Now, which has very often been an exception to the coverage elsewhere, because instead of the nation wants to know, you actually do believe in what the nation needs to know. And that's something that I congratulate you on.
Well, I know we have a lot of journalism students at the back, so we'll also open this up for questions. You can start thinking about what question you want to ask. Now for some uncomfortable questions. The whole mess, and let's call it a mess, I think it's time to call it a mess, that happened with the aid that was going to come in, or that might have come in from the UAE. I think while it would have been either miscommunication or otherwise, it got turned into lies to defame India, maybe by social media.
Yeah, I mean, there were 2 or 3 very negative things that happened on social media. The first was the kind of really negative force. There was a character calling himself Suresh, I believe, who recorded a voice message saying, don't send aid to Kerala. It's only rich people who are affected. They've got their own resources. This went viral. I myself must have got it 20 times in different WhatsApp groups saying,
did all
don't
of you
send
hear
aid to
that
Kerala.
message? That
Yeah, I mean, I
Suresh
think
message? Everybody
widely,
heard it?
And
it was horrible.
And it took, I think, Dhanya Rajendran of News Minute was amongst the first to issue a correction, saying this is utter nonsense and refuting it point by point. Others piled on. We were able to get the corrective message out. But the damage that was done, because I know a number of good, otherwise generous friends in the north who were circulating the first guy's message saying, don't give. And some people may never have seen the correction. So that was one kind of damage. The second kind of damage on social media was this communal poison that has unfortunately affected social media in our country, where you've got, very sadly, a situation where people are quick to start identifying victims and helpers by religion. So suddenly you had messages going around saying, the Christian organizations are only helping Christian victims, we Hindus must stand up for ourselves. You got messages saying, it's good God is punishing these people because they're allowing women into Shabarimala. This kind of stuff. Somebody else said, don't help the Keralites because God is punishing them for eating beef. I mean, this is just absurd, but unfortunately, this toxic poison that has infected our society in recent years and that is most visible on social media also surfaced during the Kerala.
What I thought was beautiful, because we were tracking this very closely on Mirror Now, and every night we would put out, we would actually call, Mr. Thomas Isaac has just left, but he would get on the phone with us every night to clarify these details of, do you have enough? Do you not need any more? Do you not want people to give? That sort of thing. But none of the communal hate or bile came from inside Kerala. We didn't get a single message. Nothing came from inside Kerala. It all came from outside of Kerala. And I think that again shows that this is a model state.
Thank you. Well, we'd like to think so. I would echo your very first comment that the way in which the people of Kerala pulled together, beyond religion, beyond caste, beyond even political parties. This is a very politicized state. But when it came to helping human beings in need, all political parties were directly involved. And so we had literally the ruling communists were very much present, but so were the Congress, so was the BJP and the RSS. All these groups came together, and wherever I went to camps, I must say, I never saw any bad blood, ill feeling, or unhealthy competitive spirit amongst them. So the DYFI guys would be bringing lunch today, and the Congress workers would be looking after getting school textbooks for the kids who'd lost their textbooks. And there was a sense that we were all in it together and trying to give what we can to those in need. Terrific.
Do you believe that India should accept aid, whether from UAE or any other individual country? Because I want to remind the audience, this is a policy, an unwritten policy that was made during the Manmohan Singh government, a government that you were part of.
Well, actually, no, it was made by the government that I was not part of back at the tsunami time in 2005 when I was still at the UN, in which the government's policy was, look, we can actually meet the needs of our people ourselves. And in fact, that was true, because the central government did come through with everything that the tsunami-affected states requested without exception. However, in 2016, a new policy was issued as part of the National Disaster Management Policy proclaimed by the Narendra Modi government, the BJP government. And this policy said as follows: we, in the event of a disaster, natural disaster affecting our country, we as a matter of policy will not appeal for international assistance, but if any foreign government should voluntarily offer assistance, we may accept it. That is in the written policy issued in 2016 by the present government. So the BJP spokespeople saying that somehow their amour propre, their self-respect was affected by people being willing to accept foreign aid is nonsense. A, this is the official declared policy. And B, there are countries far richer than us which have accepted aid at times of crisis. After Hurricane Katrina in the US, the richest economy in the world, India sent them $5 million and they accepted it. They didn't worry about saying that their arrogant ideas of self-respect were affected. On the contrary, when human beings are in need anywhere, the normal human instinct is one of solidarity and compassion. That's how God made us, for God's sake. When there were earthquakes in our neighborhood, we in India have helped. We have given help in Nepal, we've offered help in Pakistan, we've given help in Iran, in Myanmar,
But Mr.
in
Tharoor,
Bangladesh.
the idea that we should be net donors and not net recipients, and we have the money right now. We're not, this is not for the lack
Well,
of
it depends
funds.
on how much money. You see, for the actual rescue effort, we didn't need foreign help.
Yes.
Say, unlike the Thai kids trapped in the cave when all sorts of scuba divers and God knows
Yes,
were
we have
showing
the
up.
best in class in our services.
We have what we need.
Yes.
For the relief, we didn't need foreign help. We were giving relief immediately, and that's continuing right now. My own office, I'm proud to say, has clocked 4.9 crores in relief efforts in collaboration with a social media group called Kerala Rescue Mumbai,
Yes.
which has come in with us, and individuals, including my own All India Professionals Congress, have really pitched in from all over the country, and that's been fantastic. Third comes the rehabilitation. There the needs are a little greater. And again, I'm sure India is capable of meeting those needs by itself, but very often NRIs and others are sending stuff which we can use. But finally comes the rebuilding. And there, everything depends on how the level of needs are assessed. It's not like the tsunami, which affected a limited number of areas and a limited number of people. What has happened in Kerala, the scale of it has to be understood in the context of this being a very developed state, where over decades infrastructure has been built up that has now been washed away or damaged. So 50,000 homes, Faye, have either been damaged irreparably or completely washed away in rivers and landslides. We've had 39 bridges affected. 80,000 kilometers of roads have been affected. So in these circumstances, you're not talking about a few hundred crores here and there. What we're talking about is a scale of disaster that the rest of India will find it difficult to comprehend. And the model I want to offer you is what was done after the Gujarat earthquake in 2001, when the town of Bhuj was pretty much leveled. Narendra Modi became chief minister at that time, and an international conference was convened to reconstruct Gujarat. $1.7 billion, B with a B, was offered by the international community, including 42 million by the UN alone. And on that basis, Bhuj has been rebuilt and built better, so it'll withstand the next earthquake a little more ably than it could the last time. That's the model it seems to me Kerala should follow.
Union Minister Alphonse, when he spoke to us during the entire controversy, said the current government's estimate of 20,000 crore rupees as what it's going to cost to rebuild is just an estimate. There is no clear study. And only after there is a clear study of what we're actually going to need will the central government release funds. Do you think that's unreasonable?
That's not unreasonable. I myself have advocated, and I partly in response to a number of requests on social media and on Twitter, I took it upon myself to go and knock on the doors of my old contacts at the United Nations humanitarian headquarters agencies in Geneva. And I came back and I briefed the Chief Minister extensively and gave him a written report from Geneva itself. My first recommendation was indeed a strong needs assessment. I said, let's get in a multi-agency, multi-sectoral, internationally credible team of experts through the UN, World Bank, and so on, to just assess what this disaster means. Because if the state government comes up with its own numbers, there'll definitely be people in other parties and the central government and so on who'll say, no, this is too much, this is exaggerated, etc. So let's come up with an internationally credible needs assessment, saying exactly what needs to be done and what it'll cost. And then my recommendation would be, let's do what the Gujaratis did, have a Rebuild Kerala conference, get the world community and the central government and donor agencies and the UAE for that matter to attend, and let's see what pledges can be made, some of grants, some of loans, some of charitable efforts, whatever it may be, to help us rebuild Kerala better. So the next flood, and there will be more floods, global warming is a reality we can't escape. The next flood doesn't do as much damage as this one did.
We've been talking about how there's no partisan, we didn't see parties sort of split apart during this whole thing. So I'm going to ask you some of those questions. Honestly, would you say the state government, although you're in opposition of the state government, did a good job in the face of the calamity that they saw play out in the state?
I would say yes, but not only the state government. I think the state government, for the most part, also means the non-political parts of the government, the district collectors, who did a terrific job, whether it's those at the giving end, for example, the collector in Trivandrum, who managed to make Trivandrum a sort of young Vasuki played a key role in making this a hub of relief efforts for the rest of the state, but also the collectors in the receiving districts, in Wayanad, in Pathanamthitta, in Kollam, various places covered themselves with glory by their hard work and their administrative efficiency. So when I say state government, I'm not only talking about the political ministers, I'm talking about the officials who really did good work, and going all the way down the administrative structure to the village levels. Second point is, at the same time, the non-governmental actors, that is the NGOs, the ordinary individuals, the spontaneous web groups.
The media.
The media, even in Kerala, the media was amazing. You had channels turning away ads, refusing to show ads so they could focus on the news. I thought it was just the way the state came together, everybody, including the government, gets credit.
Yes. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the political portion of the Kerala government in the last 2 months?
To be honest, we weren't focused on that. I mean, it's easy for me as an opposition MP to say 5 or 6 out of 10. But I don't want to get into that because that wasn't the biggest issue in Kerala. In fact, if I can tell you very frankly, there was this sense that we were all in this together. That literally, we were either all going to drown
So you
or
you could give them 8 on 10 then?
See, it depends on what you're measuring. You see, I mean, I don't think there have been any major mistakes once the disaster had happened. But I do think there are legitimate questions about what happened that led to the disaster. And any grading of the government that overlooks their responsibility before the disaster would also be politically irresponsible. That's why I don't want to get into grading the government. I would say the tragedy happened. Everybody from the government to the opposition to the government administration, the local workers, the NGOs, the media, everybody pulled together. At the next stage, there will be some certain serious questions and postmortems that need to be done.
How would you rate the central government's response? Again, you're in opposition of the central government, but Mr. Rajnath Singh's response actually was 2 days ahead of the national channels that you talked about. He responded very quickly. The Prime Minister...
Not 2 days. Well, maybe the national channels, but Rajnath Singh ji came through, if I remember, on the 15th night or 16th morning with 100 crores as an initial grant.
But he did visit the state before that.
To be honest, I don't recall. Obviously, it wasn't here, because this district was relatively less affected. Mr. Modi came after the Vajpayee funeral, so it was 2 days later. So the initial response, many felt, was lacking. There's also, unfortunately, the sad memory of the Oki disaster, the big cyclone that hit the state in December last year, when the state government asked for 7,400 crores in help, and the central government came through with a grand total of 133 crores. So there was always this assumption that the central government doesn't give us even a fraction of what we need. So that may have colored some of the initial criticisms of the central government. But I'm glad that the government and the Prime Minister himself have clarified that the 100 plus 500, namely 600 crores, is only an initial installment and that other contributions will come.
Plus, if you consider the state government's allocation of the disaster relief fund, which takes it up then to 1,100 crores.
Well, yeah, the state government's the contributions the state government has received overwhelmingly have been at this stage for the immediate relief effort. I don't think anyone realistically thinks that you can rebuild Kerala on the basis of individual contributions from you and me. I think rebuilding a state with this much infrastructure loss is going to be a governmental-led effort. It has to be. And, we're talking here about 1,000 crores in relief. Great. We're talking there about 25, 30,000 crores in rebuilding. You're not going to get that by stretching out, opening the accounts of the Chief Minister's Relief Fund. They're going to look for some very serious national and international assistance.
And do you believe that would be a loan from the World Bank, from the UN? Where would that money come from? Where should that money come from?
Again, I look at the Bhuj example. See, the Bhuj is an interesting example because it was a more sort of smaller scale, manageable situation. But a reconstruction conference was held. 1.7 billion was raised, partly in loans, partly in grants, and Bhuj has been successfully rebuilt. Now, if we were to go for that route, my feeling is some would be outright grants. There's no question that a country, for example, like the UAE, which has always told me, I know the ambassador very well, I know the foreign minister very well, they've often said, Keralites helped build our state, build our country. They will want to grant as well and not just give loans. Then you've got traditional disaster relief experts. For example, the World Bank has a disaster response management fund. That will give us some money, I'm quite sure. The UN agencies, in the case of Bhuj, they collectively came up with 42 million. I think we can expect a bit more. You can imagine a certain mixture of grants aid in terms of loans and aid in terms of, quite simply, governmental, taxpayer contributions as well. And that mixture together will have to help rebuild Kerala. It's not a task for one day or two. It's going to be, in my view, a long haul for this government or whichever one succeeds it in Kerala. We will need to have a single-minded devotion to rebuilding Kerala, but rebuilding it in a way that takes into account the things that weren't taken into account earlier. For example, have we done floodline mapping? Do we know how nature makes the waters flow?
Mr. Isaac, when he was just leaving the room, told me that they are doing floodline mapping,
Good.
which for our audience's benefit basically means that they will study the movement of the floodwaters and make sure that when they're rebuilding, they're not building in the way of those floodwaters next time.
So, for example, an individual homeowner will say, I can only build my home where I have my land, so my home is washed away, I'll build there again. The state government may actually need to pass a law making it impossible for him to do that, taking over his land but giving him equivalent quality land somewhere else which is outside the floodwater. It's a tough decision politically to take, but that may be necessary. So that's why there's a huge amount of stuff that needs to be done that I suspect will go well beyond the capacity of any state government and any central government in India to be able to meet the bill off by itself.
I guess the question, and I'm not going to ask you to rate the forces and the services because they did 100 out of 20. This is the rating we should give them. And I don't think any of us are in a position to even give them a rating. But my question is this. If the state government did everything it could at the time, the civil services, the citizens, the NGOs, the central government which was following policy, was it just social media that was creating controversy?
You know, I honestly think that is largely true because nowhere else could you find that controversy. You didn't find it much on the streets or the camps. You certainly didn't see any of this on the Malayalam channels, which were uniformly focused on the victims, the survivors, the heroes who were living through this experience. And you didn't see much of it in the mainstream media either. You essentially saw it in social media. And so the question we have to ask increasingly is this very useful platform unfortunately also becoming a platform for the worst elements in our society to spew their venom, their toxicity, their bile, day after day in ways that corrode the nature of our public discourse.
The law minister has suggested regulating WhatsApp and social media, making the platforms accountable for what is being posted in order to avoid what they call fake news. Now, for example, that message that told people don't give to Kerala, Kerala doesn't need your charity, that is fake news because you're pointing someone in the wrong direction. That misinformation could actually do severe damage to the work that was happening. Should there be regulation or would that be an infringement on freedom of speech?
I'm afraid I still would come down on the infringement argument. I think once you give the government power to interfere with what free citizens in a democracy are saying to each other, you are on a slippery slope. Because God knows, today it is fake news, tomorrow there'll be differing interpretations of whether the news is fake or not, and day after there'll be political opposition that is being censored. I would be against censorship. But I think we need to educate people, and certainly we need these very, very successful platforms to start developing significant algorithms through artificial intelligence and so on, to be able to nip some of these things in the bud when they're manifestly hate-inducing. You remember a few years ago when social media was relatively new in India, the horrors that were created when somebody maliciously tweeted pictures of victims of the Myanmar floods and said these were Northeasterners, these were victim Muslims killed by Northeasterners in the Northeast, and then Muslim groups got inflamed in cities like Bombay and Bangalore, threatened the Northeasterners of their acquaintance, and large numbers, literally lakhs of Northeasterners, fled their cities where they had their homes and their work to go back to the Northeast fearing assault. Now, this was a thing of social conduct. By the time the police woke up to these messages on social media and started announcing these messages are false, by the time they started doing that, people were already on trains heading out to the Northeast and many lives were disrupted. So it's not as if we have no experience of these things. We just haven't learned how to nip them in the bud sooner. That's not the same as censorship. I don't want to give the government the power to censor. Any government, even if it's my party coming to power, they should not have the power to censor. But there are ways short of censorship that can control this kind of damaging social media work.
Well, I must ask you, again, a lot of this happened on social media. When you made the trip to the UN, there was criticism that you were stepping outside of protocol, that you were not a representative of the chief minister. You
I
were
didn't
having
claim to be.
conversations that you shouldn't have been having. What's your response to that?
Well, my response was absolutely there in real time. Number one, I never claimed to be representing anybody because my party is not in power either in the state or in the center. I claim to be representing, if you like, my right as a representative is that I'm an elected MP from the state. And I have a conscience, and I happen to have, as a result of a 29-year career at the UN, a certain number of international contacts that give me access to people that others would find more difficult to meet. I also can speak their language and they can speak mine because I've been on the other side of the table for decades. I therefore decided to go to find out what would be possible should it be necessary to seek help. It was already becoming very clear, by the way, that some help would be necessary, that the kind of scale of damage that we had seen in the first few days already, that eventually when we got to the rebuilding stage, it would be likely to bypass anything that we could do in Delhi. Sadly, one of the first warnings I sent from Geneva was about leptospirosis, which is this disease caused by rodents' urine in the water, that people standing in water, they don't have to drink the dirty water. It comes through the mucous membranes in your legs, and it affects your kidneys and your liver. We've now had a large number of deaths in Kerala from this, and it's something that I was tipped off about in my meetings of the World Health Organization. I immediately conveyed it here. Now, my own view is that at least being able to report to the Chief Minister, and who listened with great interest and took notes himself while listening to me when I came back, about all the possibilities, gives Kerala a sense of what its options are. I think I was able to find out things for them quicker, in more detail, I'm confident to say with some more accuracy, than perhaps they would have been able to find out until they actually got someone geared up to leave from here much after they'd finished their work. It's precisely because as an MP of a relatively unaffected district that I felt I could afford to be away doing this at a time when certainly the state administration should not have been able to spare
That was one of the
anybody.
criticisms you received. Instead of being on the ground, some people called it a holiday, some people said you were traveling in Switzerland and that was unfair.
I spent precisely 24 hours in Geneva, of which about 18 were spent in these meetings altogether, and each were substantive and lengthy meetings. But the fact is that an MP's responsibility on the ground is only on the ground in his own constituency. I was here, visiting flooded areas, visiting relief camps here. It was only when the rains stopped in Trivandrum and people started going back to their homes that I felt there was much less for me to do here in terms of making a difference than I could make by going there. That's a judgment call. I stand by my judgment, and I'm pleased to say so do many of my constituents, because here I was seen when I was needed, and I've been able to go around now that we're looking at rebuilding to see what's being done in some of the areas where people's homes have been affected and so on, and I've spent the last week doing pretty much that. To my mind, these are things where everyone has to judge where they can be most useful and make the most difference. In my case, I felt I could do something that no other elected Kerala representative could do, and that's why I went and did it.
We do have time for 2 questions. Any of the young people in the audience have a question for Mr. Tharoor?
Why only the young? There shouldn't be age discrimination against gender discrimination either.
But students don't normally get an opportunity to ask. So.
Okay, students, come on. You're going to be aspiring journalists. Be tough on me.
But here's a question. There's a rumor that a big movie star will run against you in the next election.
I've been hearing that rumor too.
Are you scared?
No. Look, first of all, I respect him and like him as an actor. And I think so do most of the people of Trivandrum. He's also one of ours. He's a Trivandrum native son. He actually has a home here in my constituency, and I visited him there some years ago. So I think people like and respect people in their own fields. When they wish to try a different field, then they'll be judged by a whole different set of yardsticks. So when the time comes, we'll have to see. I am so far only seeing him in the role in which he wishes to be seen now, which is that of an actor. And I have a lot of respect and a lot of liking for him.
He's a great actor, but politician, we'll see.
Well, if he wants to get into politics, as I said, new yardsticks will have to be applied.
All right. Anyone with a question? Just hang on, we'll get a mic to you. Yes, the young lady at the back.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. Myself, Shruti. I'm from Marivenues College, and I'm a journalism student.
Right, okay.
Support from your classmates, I see.
Okay, a question that has two parts, and it's not a very major question, just something that popped in my mind. There were a lot of hatred messages going on through the social media against Kerala, even also from within Kerala, as well as lots from outside Kerala, don't help the beef eating people, etc., etc. So, do you think that that enhanced the unity and solidarity between us to help fight the floods more? And also, a second part is, are there any times, besides the disaster that happened now, also other times that has Kerala sometimes been excluded from being part of India?
Oh, well, look, first, on the first part, I still think most of it was from outside the state. I don't think there was much from inside. But as you may recall, I was provoked at one point to start the hashtag proud to be Malayali, which briefly went viral because all of us are proud to be Malayali. This was a time when some of the best qualities of the state and of the Malayali people became apparent. So to that degree, I think in many ways, Kerala rallied together. Keralites have come out of this experience feeling proud of themselves. And what's remarkable is that so has the rest of the country shown us a lot of love and a lot of support. Just today, you saw in the papers, a little group of youngsters from Punjab have shown up with some assistance that I helped them to bring over here. To my mind, I want to encourage them. I've had a Kashmiri young gentleman from the Congress party coming all the way from Kashmir to work in our camps in Pathanamthitta and Kochi. The country is definitely with us, so I wouldn't worry too much about these handful of naysayers who are being negative. So as far as I'm concerned, Kerala belongs in India, and because Keralites are all over the place, India belongs to Kerala too.
Thank you
In
so
fact,
much.
there were some of us who were not Malayali who were proud to be Malayali at that time. But, I just want to answer that question. There was a video that we played before we started this session, which was a video that we actually shot in the Mirror Now newsroom. We have people from every state as part of the team. And we did that to send the message that whatever hate you were reading on social media, that's not how India felt. These were specific people who get paid to hate on social media. It's a job. If you watch them, they do it between 9 o'clock and 6 o'clock on working days. They don't do it on Sundays, they don't do it on public holidays. And every other Saturday.
That's a useful tip. I didn't think that, So I can now issue controversial tweets on Sundays.
So you should know that India doesn't feel that way. Especially if you consider, and we did a lot of reporting also from the rest of the country, there were apples coming from Kashmir because there were people in Kashmir who actually thought this out, saying if you drop apples in water, it doesn't go bad, it floats, it's a great thing to give people for calories. People were helping out from across the country. Don't get taken by the hate you see on social media. These are terrible people, and the best way to treat them is to ignore them.
Absolutely.
That's what they deserve.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Myself, Harish Vasudevan. I'm an advocate of High Court of Kerala. I just thought to ask you a question regarding the rebuilding of Kerala. You are an international figure from Kerala. And for rebuilding, you rightly said that international help is required. Can we explore a possibility of an international conclave in Kerala for an international appeal? And can you lead or is there any such experience, especially become a part of the UN and all? Is there any such international experience for rebuilding a particular place after disaster to conduct an international conclave?
Absolutely. In fact, I have given this recommendation to the Chief Minister, who has accepted it. I've said we've had emerging Kerala conferences and invest in Kerala conferences and all of that. We can now have a rebuild Kerala conference. This is something which, as I said a few minutes ago to Faye, was done by Gujarat after the earthquake in 2001. And to my mind, it's something we absolutely should do here. But I also stressed to him that we should do it after an internationally credible and professional needs assessment has been done. Because we shouldn't go to a conference stage on the basis of guesswork. We need to have very precise, accurate thing. This is what is needed. This is how much it will cost. Who can give it? And I think, to my mind, such a conference is entirely appropriate. It's within the constitutional rights of the state of Kerala to do. But I also feel that the central government should cooperate in that. Because the central government must understand that if the final total bill after professional needs assessment is done comes to 25,000, 30,000 crores as is being suggested, The Kendra Sarkar knows perfectly well they don't have the means to give that kind of money to any state. And therefore, they should welcome the international solidarity that a conference like this could bring about. I obviously cannot lead it because my party is neither in power here nor in Delhi, but I'll be very happy to be a behind-the-scenes advisor if anyone wants me to, suggesting who all should be invited, who should be around the table, how it should work out. But believe me, within the government of India, including the state government, there's a lot of good experience and qualified officials who can also do that, I'm sure. But if they need me, I'm always available to them.
We have run out of time. Okay, the gentleman in the green shirt. Mike, very quickly.
My name is P. Rajaratnam, and I'm formerly worked with Indian Army and Bank, and now with Food Corporation of India in Kerala State. So basically, my job line is to food security. So I just want to know what will be the role of the government institutions and the collectors in rebuilding such an area where there is infrastructurally there's nothing is left, and what will be the modes of funding and others. And the role of media.
The conversation that has not been had up till now is the impact on agriculture and what happens to paddy fields or plantations, banana plantations that are overrun with floodwaters. How long does it take to get the cultivation stage?
No, there's a huge damage. Huge damage. In fact, already the preliminary estimate from the state government is in the dozens of crores in terms of damage, as well as something like a few crore hectares of land that have become unusable where the particular crop that was standing is gone, etc. I mean, paddy fields need a lot of water, but they can't be completely drowned out. And that's what's happened. To compound the matter, Kerala is not self-sufficient in agriculture. We actually import agricultural products from neighboring states. So we're going to actually need to import even more, which is unfortunate. It will have, therefore, a knock-on effect on the import bills of the state. But what will be the role? I mean, obviously, when you mention district collectors, they are the linchpin, the backbone of our administrative structure. So when a rebuilding or reconstruction program is created, they will have to play a crucial role in implementing it. That's the way it always works. But there'll be multiple agencies involved. I don't see this as an effort that's going to subside as soon as the relief camps are all closed and people have gone back home. There are many homes many people don't have homes to go back to. Many people have to rebuild. Infrastructure has been damaged, agricultural fields have been damaged, and livelihoods therefore need to be restored. In other words, people have to be able to make a living, and that's something which we have to take into account when we talk about rehabilitation. If your source of income has been destroyed, let's say you're a farm worker, and there is no farm to work in, what do you do? And the state government will have to take on a certain responsibility there.
Quick last question, actually. There are a lot of young people here and there are a lot of young people watching. Mirror Now is a channel that's watched by a lot of young people. What can the young Keralites and the young Indians do? Because it's not just farmers, it's weavers, it's various professions. They're going to take some time to find their feet again. What should the young people do, or what could they do to lend a hand?
Well, look, young people have already been lending a hand. I want to thank all the young people who have been doing so. They've organized groups of volunteers and sent them out to different districts. They have collected relief goods. They have packaged the relief goods. They have dispatched the relief goods. All of this has been done by young people. And today, as we speak, there are literally droves of young people who are out in districts where they don't themselves belong, cleaning up the houses of strangers. You know, people have gone with lime and gloves and brushes and mops, and they've gone out to actually clean up other people's houses. And this is something young people can do, first of all, because they have the energy, the physical fitness, the devotion to do, but secondly also because in some ways young people can spare the time. There are fewer other social and family obligations that tie them down, and so they're available to do that. And I think, honestly, it's a great advertisement for the young people of Kerala, how much they've already done and how much more they should be doing. Give yourselves a hand, young people, you deserve it.
Should we take one more question before we wrap up? The young lady in the first row. Yes, it's on. It's on.
Good afternoon. I'm Shobha Vishwanath from Unboarded Trivandrum. It's a 25 days old volunteer group. And today it's 25th day. So we were helping the government. Government did a great job, wonderful job. I do agree. We did help the government to send trucks, and we starting from rescuing till now. We've been working with the government. At the same time, we've been parallelly, doing our bit. that is reaching to the remote villages, areas, isolated, tribal areas and all. So my question is, during rescuing, government needed our help. Relief, they wanted our help. But then when the distribution came, they didn't need our help. So there is a gap there, It didn't reach the right hands is one thing which we have to admit. Not everyone went to the camps. There are a lot of families still who need water, basic necessities, water, food, clothing.
We have people in the audience, like Danya Rajendra is here of News Minute. Is that true that relief did not reach the right people or didn't reach all the
I
camps?
think what she means is, no, it's not that the relief didn't reach,
It
but
did
that
reach.
under the government rules, the relief had to be sent to the district collectors and only they could distribute. So an NGO, and by the way, Anmol
So
Trivandrum did
volunteers were involved in all the stages except distribution.
distribution. You
So
guys
why?
did a great
Why
job, and
that's
I want to
deficit?
congratulate you, Shobha, for
Is there a
organizing.
trust deficit is what I'm
you'll
asking.
have to let
Yeah,
him answer
I
the
want to
question.
congratulate you for organizing Anmol Trivandrum and the young people you were able to get together to do this. Terrific effort, and may it continue. Don't give up yet.
No,
There's still
we'll
work,
be there
work
till-
being done.
Okay, you've
but
asked your
she is
question.
right, Faye, in that because the government is also worried about diversion of relief supplies, if too many are organized, they did centralize it. So we collected material here, gave it to the collector in Trivandrum. Collector in Trivandrum dispatched it to the collector, let's say in Pathanamthitta, who in turn collected it centrally and then distributed it through whatever
But isn't-
armies of volunteers he
Yes.
could trust or she could trust. Now, the difficulty we have is, in many cases, that often the intended beneficiaries are contacting our people directly or NGOs like Anmol directly
Lot
saying,
of
please give
requests
us some supplies,
still
and
coming.
they cannot legally do so. So that is the challenge. That is very much the challenge.
But isn't that also the official way, so that you make sure there no leakage in the
Correct.
system
No,
from
that's the
collector to
logic.
collector,
Yeah.
that the government is actually watching the entire process?
It's not ill-intentioned. It's done with the intention of ensuring that there is no leak or diversion of relief supplies because the government has control of it all the way through. But I understand Shobha's
I'm not
concern. Human
blaming
beings
that
out there to
because
help.
people who got
We've run out of time, and we have to. Yes.
The relief, as she mentioned, is not reaching the people it is supposed to reach. It has happened in many places. The political interference there is too much. Even the collector is put aside and the netas come and direct where the relief should go. This has happened in many cases. And now, continuing forward, when the rebuilding starts, there is going to be a huge level of corruption which needs to be checked and controlled.
Okay, fair point. And
That's
I
a
think
fair
that's
point.
a job for all of us, including the media, to sort of keep an eye on that and make sure that we're constantly reporting from Kerala and we're keeping an eye on it. This tends to happen that after the calamity, when all of the buzz is gone, the media leaves as well. But at least on Mirror Now, we promise that we are not going to leave. We've actually moved reporters who are now doing what we call long form episodes, traveling through Kerala, actually reporting on the rebuilding process, actually doing, half an hour specials on what is happening and what we
Right.
can do to continue to keep focus on Kerala so that the country, doesn't look away. So we've run out of time, but I want to thank you for making
Thank you
time
for
for
doing
us.
the great reporting you are on this subject. Keep it up, Faye. Thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Shashi Tharoor.